With the internet and social media, it is now easier than ever to make a living as an artist. And many artists are already doing that, proving that the whole idea of a starving artist is like a thing of the past. However, there are still many artists today who struggle with making a living with their art, or they have chosen not to make a full-time living with their art. So what is it then that makes an artist successful? My name is MaryAnn. In this video, I'm going to talk about what makes an artist successful. So I've been a working artist for about 10 years now, and full disclosure, I am not making a full-time living from selling my art. This is something I have been struggling with, partly because I was also a new artist when I started selling my work. And I've been concurrently also figuring out what kind of artist am I, and at the same time exploring various ways of how to make a living with art. I've tried a lot of things, from portraits commissions to children's book illustration to mural commissions to becoming a doodling instructor at one point, to even trying a couple of art business systems to sell my original work. At the same time, while doing all that, my art style has continued to evolve because I'm also still trying to find my style as an artist. So I haven't produced a consistent body of work enough to build a consistent audience over time for me to sell to. So let's just say, in short, I have not found the right thing for me. Like, I know a lot of the things that I don't want because I've tried them, but I haven't yet figured out exactly what is the right thing for me. So in the eyes of the world, obviously, clearly, I am not a successful artist. When I say the world, I mean the socio-economical, cultural, political, religious world that we live in. So this world focuses a lot on our achievements and external results, and this is measured against predetermined standards. I don't know who predetermined them, but that is just the way things are. Industry standards, if you will. Hate that term. And oftentimes we become conditioned to see our peers who are in the same industry as competitors, as, people that we have to outshine and outdo and outperform, such that we get more attention and thus more opportunities, more sales, more money, more fame, more influence, whatever it is that we are gunning after as an achievement. So a lot of it is like a scarcity mentality, kind of, because we have the impression that such things are limited, and so we have to be better than our peers in order to get the things that we want, as defined by this external world. So success in this world then is often measured according to how much money you earn, your job title and professional ranking, your social standing, who you know, how much power and influence you have over others, or sometimes even just being the best at something. In the art world, a successful artist is often defined as 1, making a full-time living with your art, 2, having like sell-out exhibitions and art shows, 3, having a high demand for your work, like, maybe there's a wait list to acquire a work or to even get you to commission something, and of course the monetary value that is placed upon your work. So basically, the more expensive your work sells for, the more value it is perceived to have. And of course, a lot of these factors are interrelated as well. So based on these standards then, no wonder in the eyes of the world, not many artists would be considered successful. And to give you a very classic example of the starving artist, Vincent van Gogh, right? By the socio-economical, cultural, political, religious standards of his time, he was definitely unsuccessful. And a lot of it was because his style of work did not fit what was considered acceptable as art at that time. Like nowadays, almost anything goes for art. But in his time, it was very particular about what was acceptable as art. And so he was kind of ahead of his time. That was the main reason why he was not successful as an artist based on those standards, okay? So, on the one hand, there are these external factors of success that we have been conditioned to believe in, and perhaps even unconsciously adopted as our own measurement and definition of success, because it's like, drummed into us by everyone around us. And even if intellectually we may believe that, these things are just external and doesn't really matter at the end of the day, emotionally we still have some sort of attachment towards these things. Like, you can't just shake it off. And unconsciously, it would still impact the decisions we make. It still influences the way we see the world, the way we see ourselves, the way we measure ourselves and our self-worth. And a lot of us still strive towards these things without really understanding why we're going after these things in the first place. And does it even really matter at the end of the day? Does it even really matter to you to begin with? A lot of times these measurements of success, because they are more external, they don't really consider your character or who you are as a person. So then we come to our own internal and personal definition and measurement of success. So coming back to Vincent van Gogh, obviously he may not have sold much work or made a full-time living with his art, but he was also one of the most productive artists ever in history. I mean, considering his career lasted only 10 years, the guy made over 2,000 artworks that we know of, out of which 900 of them were paintings. In fact, towards the last few years of his life, the last 3 years or so of his life, he was producing almost one painting every single day. Now, you try and imagine this, okay? Imagine you didn't have a day job, but someone was giving you a very small allowance to get by on, just enough for you to barely survive, like what Vincent was getting from his brother. And imagine you're a full-time artist, but you weren't selling any work, you weren't even getting into exhibitions, and nobody wants to buy your work, nobody wants anything to do with it. Would you still continue making art? Would you be able to make art on a daily basis for 3 years with no success, according to the socio-economic, political, religious, cultural world? I know I definitely would not last a month, okay? maybe I would last 6 months, but that's probably be the extent of my perseverance in this. So clearly there is something to be said about Vincent van Gogh. In his personality, in his character, and maybe the passion that he has for his work. There was something within him that had nothing to do with the external world and the external circumstances he was living in. Something within him that basically drove him to keep producing his work even when there was no external validation and no external recognition, no external reward. Even when he was literally broke all the time, he still showed up and made his art. The reality about being an artist is that if you want to make a living from your work, we need to have an audience who wants to buy our work. Essentially, we're basically business people. We're business people with a product, and in order to make a living, someone needs to buy it. If we look at it from that framework, to be successful as an artist in the eyes of this socio-economic, political, cultural, religious world, it really isn't all that complicated, because all you have to do is just make art that there's already a demand for. So to give you an example, portraits commissions are always in demand in any style, not just realistic. There's also always work for commercial illustrators, book illustrators. Even recently, if you look at the trends in the art world, street art is becoming really popular now. So if you plan to be a mural artist, that is also another avenue that you can make a comfortable living from as an artist. And if your work is very commercial, there's also the world of art licensing, which is basically you sell the rights to your work for it to be printed in various things like greeting cards, t-shirt designs, textile patterns, household decorative items. Then there's also original art that is basically very friendly as a decorative piece in someone's home. So there's a huge market for that as well. I don't know a whole lot about the fine art world, but what I have observed about it, that it's a lot of times it's about the concept of your work, how you conceive it, and then also to some extent your technical ability, though that's not always the case. A lot of times it's how you share the ideas behind it. And of course, if you have the right connections and let's say, a very famous collector starts collecting your work, it can basically boost the appeal of your work. So in the eyes of this socio-cultural, economic, political, religious world, these artists may be seen as successful because they're making a living from their work. And there's a demand for their work. Maybe you're one of those artists. Nothing wrong with that. So then the real question is this. Do you want to make art to suit what an audience demands? Or do you want to make art that you want to make and then figure out who your audience is from there? Would you personally consider yourself successful by your own standards? Imagine that all the external standards in the world have been stripped away. Imagine that money was no longer a factor in any of our decisions, and we are free to do whatever it is that we want. With the work that you're currently producing that's earning you a living as an artist, can you really say that that work does fulfill you? And would you then consider yourself successful by your own definition and your own standards? What are your personal, internal standards and definitions of success as an artist and also as a human being? Coming back to Vincent van Gogh, he seemed to be driven to just immortalize the world around him in his style of painting. Perhaps completing one new painting every day was like his definition of success as an artist. I mean, I'm not Vincent van Gogh, I'm just speculating here. The thing about the external standards of this external world is that they're not going to go away anytime soon, but they are changing over time. Trends come and go. What was like a big deal today isn't going to be a big deal like 5 years from now. You might be getting some success for your work now, but then maybe 2 years later something changes in the world and suddenly that style of work is no longer appealing and no longer in demand. We don't know how this external world will shift and change. Like, we can maybe predict if we are that perceptive and keeping up with what's going on in the world, but we can't predict it. We're not going to know how things are going to change. And if we base our definition of success on these external factors alone, without understanding what really matters to us at the core, then it's very easy to get caught up with what the world thinks and what the world wants, and no longer are we connected to what we really want and what matters to us and our own values and principles. I think that at the end of the day, we only have this one life to live. And I think also that when it's our time to leave this world, we will have to be very honest with ourselves, and really just the only person we will answer to is ourselves as to whether we have made the most of our time in the ways that matter the most to us. So then, what is it that makes an artist successful? I think there's really no right answer to this question. I think it personally comes back down to what you decide is success to you, according to your values, your principles, and the kind of life you want to live and what really matters to you. I think also that it's important for us to figure out what is this internal definition of success that we have as individuals and our own worth as a person and as an artist, and the intrinsic value of our art, which is priceless, by the way. And then look at what's going on in this socio-economic, cultural, political, religious world and figure out which game we want to play, so that even when things in this external world changes, we would be better able to adapt and adjust ourselves accordingly without losing sight of who we really are and what really matters to us. Or if you can go ahead and break the rules and, shift that world to fit you instead of the other way around. Now, all of this I know is so much easier said than done because, this external measurement of success has been like so deeply ingrained in us that it's very hard to differentiate sometimes what is of your own decision versus the external world interfering and influencing your choices. For me personally, I have been struggling a lot of times with, am I making the art that I want to make? Or am I making the art that I think is going to sell so that I can make a living off of it? And that has been probably the biggest struggle that I've had for the last 10 years. I also want to say that I firmly believe that there is an audience for anything that can be created. Anything that you are able to conceive of and create, no matter how weird, no matter how unconventional, no matter how bizarre, no matter how ridiculous, there is an audience for it out there somewhere. The challenging part for us then is to find that right audience for the work that we are creating and putting out there. So wherever you are in your artist journey, I encourage you to keep going. I hope that you keep making the art that you love, that makes you happy, that at the end of the day, you feel satisfied and fulfilled by the work that you're producing and by whatever you're doing with your art career. And also, if you're up for it, to keep sharing that work until you find that audience that is perfect for it. And ultimately, that whatever game you choose to play in the socio-economic, cultural, political, religious world, I hope that it is the right one for you. So if you have any questions about this, or if you agree or disagree with whatever I'm sharing, do feel free to share with me in the comments. And if you want more videos about how to go about creating the best art career for you, subscribe to my channel. There will be more of these videos coming where I share my experiences as a working and struggling artist for the last 10 years. So that's it for now. I wish you the best in your art journey and figuring out the best art career for you, and I will see you soon.